Well, we are humbled to have Kermit Davis with us, Ole Miss head basketball coach, gearing up for his third season in Oxford. I'm Brian Fenley with Fox Sports Radio. I'm on Twitter at Brian Fenley. Kermit, it is an absolute delight to have you here. Early portion of August, and I already see you guys are working out, so I want to ask you about how fun that must be. But let's get to the important stuff. What was your claim to fame as a basketball player?
Gosh, claim to fame. Well, I tell you about my illustrious career, Brian. Okay, is I tell you my claim to fame was I think my junior year, I only played in about 5 games, and
Okay.
we're playing Rupp Arena. We're down two. One of our really good players, Ron White, went in for a layup, got fouled, got hurt. So I hadn't played in about 4 games, and all of a sudden, Coach Hatfield looked down there and he says, "Kermit, shoot both these free throws." So I hadn't been in a while. I was a good shooter. It took me a while to get it off, Brian. But anyway, I went to the free throw line, made both. I said, well, good. Now I've got a chance to, the ball tip came the other way, horn blew, took me right back out, and I sat down. So that's probably one of my highlight SEC moments right there, okay?
Well, you've had a lot of SEC highlight moments as a head coach, and so has your dad. So, who's the best coach in the family?
Oh, my dad, for sure.
Really?
Sure. I tell you what, Brian, I'm so lucky. My dad is just turned 85 Saturday. It's this great golf club. You've probably heard of a place called Old Waverly in West Point, and it's one of the greatest places. It just kind of reeks Southern charm in our area. And so we took him down there, all the grandkids and the children, and spent Saturday celebrating his 85th. And so yeah, he's a true Mississippian, and but that's what the greatest thing. I love Ole Miss, but he's 45 minutes from being at the game to the pavilion. So that's pretty cool for us.
When you guys have family barbecues and you and your dad are talking basketball, what are those conversations like? Because I'm sure they're super interesting.
They are. We talk about we'll talk about X's and O's, but not much. Well, I love trying to draw a comparison of now and talking to him about things they ran, whether it's the
Yes.
old Auburn shuffle or when he played at Mississippi State in the late 50s and kind of what offense looked like then and then comparing it now. But we mostly go back and talk about his old recruiting stories, and we did a video tribute to him, and guys like Wimp Sanderson, came on, and he and Dad were great friends. And to me, that's the most fun. It's just he wants to talk about my players. He loves to talk about his former players, and I love if any of them calls him, which they do regularly. He always tells us about it. And mainly I just get him to tell old Adolph Rupp stories or old Ray Mears stories or those kind of things. And so that's the coolest thing that I enjoy.
I noticed, and I was listening to your Zoom interview with reporters. I think it was back in April, and you talked about some recruiting stories, right? Where you would stop by and use a payphone to call in a recruit. How about those days? You don't have that to deal with anymore, right?
It's funny how Dad and I was talking about this is that the last year he was the head coach in the SEC in 1977, I think he made $37,000. And,
Wow.
uh, and at that time, Joe B. Hall at Kentucky was the highest paid. And I don't think Joe B. ever made much more. I mean, more than that, but not big. But Tim Floyd, used to be the coach at USC and
Yeah,
Oxford
yeah.
Bulls. Tim gave me my first break at
Wow.
Idaho. And on that staff was
Ah,
myself, Larry Eustacy, and
wow.
Randy Bennett, who's now the coach at St. Mary's. Randy was our GA. That was 1986.
Some heavy
And
hitters.
yeah, well, we weren't heavy hitters back then. We were just trying to survive, I promise you. But, I learned so much from Tim, but that was back in 86 where you just go recruit, Brian. I mean,
Yeah.
no digital stuff. And so, like after a high school game, you're driving and you've got 5 or 6 guys you got to call. So say you're a guy, I'd try to call Bryan, and maybe your mom answers the phone, and
Sure.
this is Coach Davis, Idaho, trying to get Bryan. Well, Bryan's not here. Well, when will he be back? Well, I think about 5 minutes. Well, if you do think it'll be 5 minutes, I'll give you my payphone number and you can call right here. And back then, that's where you're all looking for filling stations and gas stations to
Yeah.
pull over. Or we had the old watch line. So what's nice now, we can all go home and the staff can go home to their families and make all the recruiting calls. Well, back then, to say, if you called from home, it was a lot more expensive. So if you use this watch line at the office, So we would just live at the office, and we would stay there till 10 o'clock, 10:30 at night all the time. And but times have changed for the better. And I promise you now, I don't know how the old COVID, we couldn't have made it during the COVID
Yeah.
recruiting because we did all this Zoom stuff to try to sign players.
And people that have not been to the Palouse and seen how Idaho and Washington State are so close, and that part of the country, it's a unique part and a very fascinating part of the United States. And I've been watching and intently following. You guys are getting back on the court now. You're getting out there, getting some practices in. I'm super pumped. I see the photos from your Twitter profile, and the guys are coming together and engaging in workouts. Take us inside Tui and what these workouts are like, because I saw that you tweeted great deal of pop and energy. So illustrate that for me.
Well, I know my guys laugh. I use the term pop all the time. You got to have pop. You got to have pop. You got to have energy. And, I guess 3 weeks ago, Monday, we started for the first time that we got a chance to work our guys out since March the 11th. And it really was almost like Christmas. Our guys they were here for about 3 or 4 weeks voluntarily going through this 2-week kind of quarantine deal. And it was just so great. Everybody's so early coming to practice. And it's just been a lot of fun to have our guys. Really, today, we worked in the pavilion was really the first time we had everybody there. We've had a couple guys test positive, just tested, but didn't have any symptoms after that.
Sure.
But had to go through the 2-week quarantine. We had 2 or 3 guys, had a few symptoms, waited for test results. Their tests were negative. So really today, the first time, Bryan, we had everybody, and so that was kind of cool today. And, we can only get 4 hours a week on the floor, 4 hours in the weight room. But it's fantastic to have our guys here. We talk about small circles all the time. And, college students are now trying to understand that, that as players, your circles have to be so small and who you're around. And so our guys have done a good job. And it's so fun to be back on the court with them.
I think, being at Ole Miss during all this, have the guys and the care of everybody around them is there's no better place to be for these players, to be under your watch and care of medical professionals and basketball coaches and everybody around them. So I'm glad they're with you right now, Coach. And I was going to ask you about how much interaction, and you kind of described that, how you are only able to have a certain amount of hours per week. I can't imagine the team morale this must have being together, and you talked about this for a moment. How about what you're trying to accomplish during those hours you are able to work out? Like specifically, like what kind of drills or what are you trying to convey to your guys in that abbreviated time?
Yeah, it's a great question because I think we all have to be cognizant of those guys being off so long.
Sure.
And so we've done some one-on-one things, but really nothing 5-on-5. We haven't been up and down. Our drill work is intense and it's taxing, and they get fatigued and they get tired. But we really are kind of just slowly getting them back, and because just the fear of injuries, and my biggest thing right now is just skill development, getting rhythm back, getting themselves back in shape. And then, as probably in the next week, like today's the first full team workout we've done. Didn't do a lot of controlled contact. But we're leading up, and our guys won't go home. In a normal summer, Bryan, we would probably give them off 2 weeks. But, we go, no, you're not going to send them back home, get out of this bubble, come right back.
Exactly.
So we're going to keep them here. So we'll have them for really about 3 more weeks before school starts. And so we're doing a lot of shooting, a lot of skill development, mostly offensive areas, and trying to work on different things that kind of maybe weaknesses of our guys. But it's been really good, and it's amazing just the improvement that our players have made really in those probably 2.5, I guess Friday will be 3 weeks.
Kermit Davis joins us, head coach for Ole Miss. I'm Bryan Fenley with Fox Sports Radio, and you have brought on some nice fresh pieces to the roster. And one who I've had the privilege of watching and seeing was Romeo White when he was at Arizona State, and just what a force he was in the paint, and a guy you don't want to mess with. He's so dominant. So how has he acclimated to Oxford, and what's it been like having his presence around campus?
It's been terrific. And, he played for a really good coach and Bobby, and played on some really good Arizona State teams. he's from Atlanta, and I think he really wanted to get closer
Sure.
to home for his last year. And Romelo's been unbelievable. I just got off the phone with his mom, Patrice, a while ago, and he's just happy to be here. Obviously brings a wealth of experience. You've seen him. He's just
Yeah.
tough. He's physical. We're trying to maybe get him to where he can expand his game a little bit more, and out of high school he could shoot the ball, expand it, and face a little bit. But he's just a rugged guy. Like
Yeah.
last year, they played an SEC team, Georgia. He has 18 and 16 rebounds,
Yeah.
17 rebounds against UCLA last year. So he brings us this toughness and a guy who plays with an edge. And it's something we didn't really have last year. So he's going to be terrific for us.
And then you got the 4-star signee in Matt Murrell, and I believe that he's the highest ranked signed commitment in school history. And what is it about your charm, Coach, that entices these big names to come to Ole Miss?
Well, number one, we've got an unbelievable place to sell at Ole Miss. I've got a great staff. I mean, I really do. I have 3 guys recruiting for me that are all terrific, and I think will all be Division I head coaches. And just Matthew Murrell, we've been involved with him for a long time, and he's from Memphis. I was even involved with him when we were at Middle Tennessee way back. And just his mom and dad loved Ole Miss. They love having him an hour and 10 minutes away to be able to watch him play all the time. And Matthew Murrell, he is the highest ranked player, about the 35th best player in high school basketball last year. Great athlete, really good shooter. And more importantly, Bryan, what a good guy, 25 on the ACT, so great student. So he's kind of got the whole package.
What's a story about Breein Tyree that just illustrates this guy's resolve and bravado in carrying a team?
Well, I'll tell you about Breein. I played against him when my Middle Tennessee team came to Oxford and played in the pavilion. Breein was a freshman. He wasn't even on our scouting report.
Wow.
And didn't play in the first half. And we played this – we're up it's about the best half we've ever had a team play, up like 48-17 at the half at Ole Miss. And all of a sudden, AK, who's a great friend of mine, started 5 new guys halftime. And he stuck Breein in there. And Breein just went crazy. We couldn't do anything with him. He went by us. He drove it by us. He dunked on us. So I'm going like, who in the world is this guy? He's not even on the scout. We hung on to win the game. But I knew Breein. And, the one thing, Breein, that he loves basketball, he's a very well-rounded guy. He was the head of the SEC Leadership Council his senior year. So he's one of those guys that he's very articulate, well-rounded, and, he had some unbelievable games. Like this year in our arch rival game at home against Mississippi State, he had 40. He had about a 3-game stretch that was he was as good as any guard. I don't think, Bryan, there's any doubt that he's going to make an NBA roster at some point.
Well, that played right into my next question, because you saw the invite that he got to the NBA Combine, and I wanted to ask you, what jumps to mind when you saw that and that he's getting this opportunity?
Well, very well deserved, because he's the second leading scorer. He did it against elite talent in the SEC for 4 years. Was first team All-SEC the last 2 years. I hate it for these guys. He didn't get a chance to do all the workouts with the NBA. We sure hope, knock on wood, there is going to be a combine, that he can go to, that it'll actually happen. Because I think when he gets in front of general managers, in front of people, even face-to-face, he's done a ton of Zoom stuff, with teams. But I think in person he's even better. And when you get to know him and carry on a conversation with him in person, it hits you, that he can be a guy that can sure be a part of your organization, fit into whatever role they need.
And speaking of someone who you've coached, who has made a great first impression in the NBA, Terence Davis, a guy who, just dominated his senior year, and that was your first year at Ole Miss. And you're watching him blossom now, Coach, in his rookie season with the Raptors. And I can't imagine how proud you must be just watching him tear it up. How much of what we're seeing on the court from him this year in the NBA is a result of him saying, look, you guys who didn't draft me, this is me showing you how much you missed out on?
Yeah, TD, think about this. He averaged 1 point a game as a freshman. And in the day of instant gratification, I'm going to transfer, I wasn't here. And I asked him, I asked him, how was that 1 point a year in the sophomore year? Andy and his staff did a great job of getting TD to improve. He goes, Coach, I wasn't a very good player. I didn't know how to play. My basketball IQ wasn't very great. I mean, so it was good. He took responsibility for his game. That's so nice to see these days. And he was a great. He could have been an All SEC wide receiver in football. So he got
Sure.
recruited in both sports. So really, at Ole Miss, his freshman year is the first time he ever played basketball full time. But it really is to watch how hard he worked as a senior. Great teammate. I was kind of with him at the Vegas Summer League when he got a call. He was playing for the Nuggets that the Raptors were fixing to fly him to Toronto and signing. And then, he's leading the rookies in like plus minus, a lot of different categories. And the bench has gotten a little smaller. He's playing in every game in Orlando.
Yeah.
Well, he had a career high 31. He started a couple games, and yep. And if you got to know him, Bryan, you'd even feel better for him because he's just a good guy that people all around the state of Mississippi just really, really like a bunch.
And Kermit, I was watching when he was on the podium prior to his last home game at Ole Miss, and he got emotional. And you could tell how much it meant to him being in Oxford, being at Ole Miss, as he was trying to put into words what that final home game in Oxford would be like. And I remember him saying, like, he could not have asked for a better 4 years. And that speaks upon just how much loyalty he has to the university. And I know you were only there, with him for 1 year, but when you hear a guy tear up like that, how can a guy, of that magnitude, of that effect, as you describe he's had on you, affect your view on basketball? And when you have these kind of guys that come through, and it just changes your perception on life, but also basketball and how you operate things.
Yeah, it's from him, the story of him, what we just talked about, averaging 1 point a game and just sticking right with Ole Miss, and taking responsibility of, the things as a senior. He'd never been in NCAA tournament, and to watch TD in the pavilion when they called our name as the 8th seed, and to know he came back for his senior year, and that's what he was trying to get his team to, and he led us there. And so all the things about him and how much time he takes. I'll never forget, I was introduced as the coach, and at that time, when you take over a job, Bryan, TD was putting his name in the draft. He didn't know. I didn't know he was coming back. Breein Tyree, everybody said was leaving. Devontae, blah, blah, blah. It's always when you take these jobs, it's changed. And I never forget, I sat down with TD in our first team meeting, and TD sat on the edge of his seat, and he looked me right. I mean, his eyes never left mine.
Wow.
And he was nodding. And I knew that with TD was like that whole team was going to rally around TD.
Mm-hmm.
And then at my press conference, he came to the press conference just on his own, he and Breein both.
Wow.
When I watched them just kind of mingle with fans and how they took time with everybody, I knew, I said, well, I had two special guys, and that were people, pleasers. And so it really is. TD's, knock on wood, stay healthy, and I think he's going to have a long, great career.
I'm with you. Kermit Davis is with us, Ole Miss head basketball coach. I'm Bryan Fenley. And Kermit, my final question for you, what is your biggest win that you've been a part of off the court since taking the reins at Ole Miss?
A couple of things that obviously everybody knows our family, and it's not a cliche. I mean, kind of, I'm not basketball, I'm doing things with our family, whether it's my brother, sister, my wife, my dad and mother. I got 2 daughters. One is married. One, Allie, lives with us. So see them being in a place like Murfreesboro that we loved, and we never really thought about leaving. If we were going to stay at Middle Tennessee, we thought that was something. And just to see how Oxford and our families adopted so well in Oxford, and the people and the friends that we've met, number one. Number two, one of the most gratifying things I've ever was a part of was our flag change in Mississippi, Bryan. I mean, I was honored. They asked me to speak on behalf of all the great coaches in Mississippi. And, I grew up and I never understood why we had this flag. And it was such a long time coming. And, but to be a small part of that and to see change in Mississippi and with the flag, that I think now we can get a flag that represents, everyone in our state. And so that's one of the most gratifying things off the floor that really, Bryan, I've ever done in my whole career, just to be, that small part, something I'll never forget.
Meant to include this. I promise you this is my final question. Since Lane Kiffin has come to Ole Miss, what's a fun activity that you guys have done together?
Well, they came by the house. It's really been kind of different because of COVID. Just kind of stopped a lot of things.
Sure.
You had when a new coach came in, he comes in December, and really, and I've been there part of it when a new football coach will come in and December to like February, just like it's all recruiting, and so you
Yeah.
don't really get a chance to spend much time. But after that, then usually about March, you start to say, well, the COVID hit, and everybody's quarantined, and but Lane and his family came over to the house probably about 2 weeks ago. He's just a good guy. He's a fun-loving guy, good person. I know. I think with the SEC waiting till September 26th, that's going to help Lane and his staff
Totally.
get a little more time. And he's not a guy right now that I know real well, but I think that's going to change once things kind of settle in and he gets a grasp of his team and we get kind of COVID out of the way.
There is so much excitement around your program and his program and other athletic teams with Ole Miss, and it has been an absolute pleasure. I am flattered to have Kermit Davis on the podcast. I'm Brein Fenley. Kermit, thanks so much for doing this. It was truly a treat to have you.
Well, thank you, Bryan. And you got to get back to Oxford now and come see us, all right? Do
I
that soon.
am. I'm going to come to some of your games, and we'll get to meet in person one day. I'm really looking forward to that.
I'd love that, Bryan. Appreciate you.